I'm Dr. Virgie Bright Ellington, and I'm excited to be joined today by Matt Henderson of Oakbridge Insurance, based in Atlanta, Georgia, which delivers world-class insurance at a transparent, lower cost. And it's going to help me talk about what your doctor wants you to know about health insurance. First, thank you for joining me, Matt.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
So we talked a little bit about this. So I shared with you that I've been kind of following you on LinkedIn for a while, and I've been a big fan of your commitment to keeping the U.S. for-profit healthcare, meaning health insurance system, honest. And because this is a system we have for the foreseeable future, and particularly because this is open enrollment period for those of us who don't have health insurance through an employer, I thought we could, talk about some of the coverage options. But your representation is really with employers who can provide health insurance for their employees. So I thought, you're kind of working in a system kind of fighting the status quo. So I thought, let's talk about that. Matt, can you tell us about your journey and how you came to the health insurance world?
Absolutely. I've been an employee benefits advisor with Oakbridge for about 4 years now. And prior to that, I was just a guy out in the non-insurance related fields and working here and there. And at one point I was a sales manager for a specialty firm that just sold products and services to niche industries that had nothing to do with insurance. And it was about 2014 that I started feeling the crunch of the yearly increases of health insurance through my employer. I worked for a firm with about 500 employees, and they provided health insurance. And I think they covered, we were told that they covered 75% of the cost, and we only had to pay 25% of the premium. But it felt like it kept going up and up and up every year. And this was about 2014 that I started really feeling it and noticing it in my paycheck. And this was a few years after the Affordable Care Act was passed. And we were told that was supposed to make everything better, yet from my personal perspective, it felt like things were getting worse. And so I started asking a lot of questions. And that year I went to the dermatologist. I have very pale skin. I'm pale and proud, and I go to the dermatologist quite on a frequent basis, and I get whittled on very frequently. I'm accustomed to it.
Good work.
And 1 year they said, oh, well, there's a little spot on your front of your calf, on your shin. We need to take that off. And I said, okay, no problem. Been here before, take that off. Oh no, this is a surgery. You'll need to schedule another place and another time, which I was like, okay, well, that wasn't like this the last time I was here. That's strange.
Same doc, same dermatologist, same practice.
Same place. Okay. Absolutely. Just something had changed. It was now considered a surgery. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but I just started asking questions about it, and none of the answers that I got made any sense to me. And I just felt as if something just felt fishy, and it just felt like something had changed in the air, and it felt like I was being used as a cash cow. And we'll come back to more on that in a little bit, but it just felt odd. And then I realized that because of the new designation of this is now going to be a surgery, it was going to cost me out of pocket about $700 or so, and I wasn't excited about that. And at the same time, I was like, well, if the doctor says it's needed, it's needed. So about 2 weeks later, I made that the appointment to a whole new place, and I went in and got prepped, and a whole new person came in, and she said, hey, just any questions before we get started? Do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, actually I do. Why am I here? This doesn't seem like anything. This seems like something that would have been handled in the office with the little nitrogen gun for the last 5 years. That's how you did it. But now all of a sudden it's a whole new thing. And she said, hang on a second, let me just take a look. And she looked at the little spot on my shin, and she said, this isn't that bad. Let's just wait and see. Do you just want to wait and see? And I said, yeah, I do want to wait and see. Thanks. And I got dressed and got out of there. $700, not lighter. And I thought to myself, what the heck is going on here? About 6 months later, our company then went through an open enrollment, and we were going to have a double-digit increase to the employee, to me, and also therefore to my employer. And during that enrollment process, again, I'm not in the insurance industry at all, but I'd started asking a lot of questions. I happened to know someone who is forefront in the transparency movement of billing. And so I came a little bit armed with knowledge. And at that time, the broker for this firm that I was working for was leading us through the open enrollment, through all the changes. And I think we were switching from, I don't know, it may have been from Aetna to Cigna or something like that. I don't know, just one of the, what we call BUCA. I now know that we were just going from BUCA to BUCA.
Right. Now BUCA stands for
thank you.
BUCAH.
Yeah. And it stands for Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, and Humana. And it's just an industry jargon term that we just refer to as big insurance.
The big ones, yeah.
Kind of like people say big tobacco.
Running things, big exactly. Big,
right.
Big industry, big health insurance.
And so he was telling us about the new changes to the plan. This is changing. This is going up. This is going down, et cetera. Just giving us the boring details. Everyone's eyes was glassing over like they always do at these super boring open enrollment meetings about insurance. And then he mentioned. He said, hey, I want to tell everybody about this thing that's kind of cool. It's called GoodRx. Well, at that time, GoodRx wasn't the household name that it is today. And so he was telling us about this website that one could go on and get much cheaper medications. And for example, he said, so you guys have a $20 copay and you might be able to get XYZ medication and it might be $5. And of course, that got my attention. I wrote that down to tell my wife because like most fellas, my wife handles that kind of stuff. I was just the guy getting the information that was going to pass it on to her. So I wrote that down and he said, does anyone have any questions? And I raised my hand and I said, yeah, hey, thanks for this GoodRx information. How do I make this work with my insurance? What do I need to do to activate that so I can get credit for even though I'm for the $5 that I'm spending or whatever it happens to be? Because I knew enough about it then that I needed to, get credit for those things. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't even work with your insurance. I'm just giving you a free tip. I found out about this. It's completely independent of your insurance. It's just basically a cash transaction. Then he moved on to the next topics he was talking about. And that something just didn't sound right to me about that. And a few minutes later, he said, does anyone have any questions? And there was about a dozen of us in the room. And I raised my hand and said, yeah, I've got a question. And he said, what you got? And I said, can you just help me understand? And I wasn't trying to set him up and throw any shade. Because I just wanted to understand. Unfortunately, I'm the guy that likes to understand how the watch was made when I ask you what time it is. That's a blessing and a curse sometimes. And I said, can you just help me understand how there's a free website that can get a better deal on medications than the insurance that I'm paying for every 2 weeks? You're literally telling me not to bother using my insurance. And the room went silent. And if looks could kill, he shot laser beams into my forehead from his eyeballs. And he literally said, stop with the question so I can finish my meeting.
Wow.
And I said to myself, Roger that.
You've touched a nerve.
Yeah. So that was the second thing.
You have to ask why. I have many mottos, Matt, but one of them is if you have to ask why, follow the money.
Well, right. And so my mind immediately went to one of two things. I said to myself, okay, so either you to this fella that was the broker for this firm, I said to myself, either this guy doesn't understand the product and service that he's selling to my company that's costing me money, and now it's costing me more money, or he does and he's withholding something. There might be a third option, but anyway, that's where my mind went. And he told me to stop asking questions so he could finish his meeting. So I stopped and let him finish his meeting. And I thought, I'm going to find out what's going on. About a few months later, my wife goes in for a routine mammogram. They found some things on it, and that kicked it up to a second level mammogram, the 3D ultrasound. So she went in. Obviously, there's concern now. And so I go in with her. And I think we had Cigna, not that it matters, but Cigna who our insurance was with through that same employer. And so we go in, we fill out the paperwork, get processed. My wife goes back. I'm at the desk with the intake person, for lack of a better term. And I said, hey, I'm just curious, how much is this going to be? Because we had a $3,000 untouched deductible. So, I'm thinking, well, however much this is going to be, y'all are going to process it and bill it, and eventually it's going to find its way back to me, because now this is no longer a covered procedure. It's now diagnostic.
Mm-hmm. And that's so because, just to clarify, you're saying, Matt, you're explaining that there are certain preventive services that are covered if you have insurance 100%.
Yes.
By law, by the federal Affordable Care Act, ACA, also known as Obamacare.
Correct.
Requires that if you have insurance, that certain procedures that are preventive screening have to be covered 100%. Without any
by the insurance plan, no out of pockets, no out of pockets,
no out of pocket at all, no cost sharing at all, no copay, no co-insurance,
correct,
at all,
zero cost to the member.
Your thing is, you knew, okay, this is no longer screening, this is now diagnostic, so I'm on the hook for 100% of this up to my annual deductible. Right,
and we had a $3,000 deductible per person, and we hadn't touched it at all, and so it was just a curiosity. I just said, hey, how much is this going to be? Because ultimately it's going to cost me once it gets, makes its round processing through and then comes back to me. So simple question, how much, right? And the lady says, well, it depends. Are you going to use your insurance? And I was not ready for that question.
Wow.
I said, well, what difference does it make? And she said, she looked at the computer screen and it was, typed away, and said, well, this procedure, these are her exact words. I remember them burned into my brain. She said, this procedure has a $970 insurance billing rate. But if you pay cash, if you want to do self-pay and just pay us today and not use your insurance, we can give you a 75% discount. She pulls out a calculator from the desk drawer, does the math, and it ends up being something to the tune of $280. I couldn't get my wallet out of my pocket fast enough. I gave her a credit card and said, here you go. And I'm thinking to myself, well, 280 is way less than 900. That's a great deal. I'm not that stupid. So here you go. And I thought, well, this is not a problem. But at the same time, I kind of looked around to myself. I said, what the heck is going on here? And I was naive enough to think, wow, I cannot wait to go back and tell HR what a great deal they can have. So my wife comes out, and there's more to that story later, but I take the paperwork that I got from paying the bill, not just the receipt, but all the codes and everything. And I go to my HR department and ask for a manual claim form, because again, I'm not looking to get reimbursed, because I know that's out of pocket money, but I at least want to get credit for this expense. I just want that to go to my out of pocket accruals and aggregate up. And HR, of course, gave me, got the form, downloaded it, and got it to me. So I filled it out, and the insurance company, again, Cigna, not that it matters, but it was Cigna, and they reached it back out to me and said, yeah, you this doesn't work. You didn't go through insurance. I said, of course I didn't go through insurance. I got a better deal. I'm not asking you for any money. I just want to get credit for this expense. And it went back and forth with a lot of confusion and a lot of confusing answers and confusion on my part. And eventually the end of the story was, well, the only way that you can get credit for this is if you go back and we process it through the insurance. And I said to myself, that's all I want to do. And they said, okay, well, you need to pay the difference. And I said, why would I pay the difference?
Go back it up. Say it again.
Exactly. So the lady at the desk said that this has an insurance billing rate of $900 and whatever dollars, but we can give you a 75% discount. After that, it turned out to be $281. So flash forward, or go back to the insurance folks saying the only way that we can give you credit is if you pay the difference. And I said,
pay that full amount.
Well, that's what I said. Why would I pay $900? And they said, oh, no, we wouldn't pay $900. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's where all this confusion is. Y'all get a discount? She said, of course we get a discount. We're big insurance company. And I said, okay, great. Maybe now we're on the same page. So what's the difference? And they said, oh, we get a 35% discount. So it would have only been $600.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, wait a second, I only paid $281. And they said, yeah, all you need to do is pay that difference. And then we can reprocess through insurance. And of course, I'm thinking, okay, this is what's really going on here. Why is the hospital willing to give me a much better deal if I don't use my insurance? And so that's the game right there. That's the big game. And so I'm not a doctor like you are. I don't know all the ins and outs of the various procedures and codes and what's real and what's needed and what's proper. But I just know that you need to ask questions. And what's been going on, unfortunately, is the average American's insurance card, whether they are on government provided insurance or private employer provided insurance, the average American's insurance card is treated as if it's an unlimited, unchecked corporate expense account. And that's what's going on. And it's so people say we have a healthcare crisis. We don't have a healthcare crisis. Well, we might, but that's a different story. What we really have financially is a healthcare cost crisis.
Exactly.
And in the status quo healthcare billing industry includes PBMs, that stands for pharmacy benefit managers. It includes hospitals. It includes BUCA, the big insurance firms. And sadly, it includes guys like me, insurance advisors, and status quo insurance brokers, advisors, brokers, interchangeable words there. Mm-hmm. And all of the players that are in a position to lower the cost of insurance healthcare are in a position to benefit when you spend more, not less. And so advisors like myself choose to get involved and bring awareness to that. And if you're an employer, if you're a CEO, CFO, you own a business, and you caught any of your other vendors billing at the way that some of these healthcare providers
padding the accounts,
mm-hmm.
padding expense accounts.
If you caught them doing that, you'd fire them in a heartbeat.
Right.
If you caught your own employee doing that to their own expense account, you'd fire them on the spot.
Why is that different in the health insurance industry? Why is that the only? We would accuse them of other industry, any other business, any other industry, any other individual would accuse them of fraud and act accordingly. And we don't do this with private health insurance companies in this country.
Well, it has a lot to do with. And by the way, this isn't just the private health insurance. This happens in Medicare, Medicaid, things like that as well. So it's not just capitalism is a big bad guy. Right. It's the fact that it's not a free market. And what I mean by that is that you're paying for a service after it's rendered. You're not negotiating up front. There's no transparency. And so a great example that's often used is eye surgery, LASIK, and breast augmentation. Those are two medical procedures that aren't covered by traditional insurance or Medicare because they're not medically necessary for one's health, right? Mm-hmm. And so because of that, it opens it up to the free market. And if you're going to get LASIK and other eye vision enhancement procedures that are medical and that are surgeries, and if you're going to get that done, what you want to get, and you shop around for it, just like you're shopping for a car. And it's the same with breast enhancements. I'm told. I've never shopped for any myself. So.
You know what? We haven't had this conversation, Matt, before. We have not talked about this before.
Okay.
And you use the exact same analogy that I use when I talk about the 3 simple steps to crush medical debt. I say, you know what? If you can buy a car, doesn't matter whether it's used or new, you know that there are certain things that you have to do. And number 1 is you don't pay the MRSP, the manufacturer retail sticker price. You're expected to negotiate. And just exact same thing with the human body. If you go to a car mechanic, a car doctor, well, they tell you, okay, your car is sick. This is what's needed. And you talk with them. You're like, well, okay, well, what happens if I don't do this now? What if I don't replace the carburetor now? Right? You ask questions. Perfect. And can I get a used part as opposed to a new part from the dealership? Will that help? This is what I can afford to pay. This is what's in my budget. Same thing with medical bills. They're 100% negotiable because they're just made up numbers, as you discussed, as you discovered in your travels. Same thing. Great analogy.
That's right. That's right. And so your question was, how did we get here, or why is it like that? And it's in part, that's a very complex question. It's a short question, but it's a very complicated question. We got this way because it's a gradual creep is one way that we got here. Another way is just the perverse incentives of those that control the spend and control where you're allowed to go. And the easiest yet very imperfect analogy that I like to use is homeowners insurance. And again, let me just say it up front, extremely imperfect analogy, but most of your listeners are going to be homeowners, or at the very least, auto owners. And so you pay for your homeowners insurance year after year after year, and hopefully you've never had any massive claims to your home, but you insure it because it's the largest investment you have. And all of a sudden one day that a wind blows and a tree falls in your house, and it's a catastrophic financial loss. You call your insurance company, they send someone out. You and the adjuster even discuss the various folks you're going to use to possibly use to do the repairs. Eventually you settle on a firm to use, and you get the quote, and it's approved by the insurance company. And let's just go all the way through. Next thing you know, your house is back. It was a $90,000 claim. It cost $90,000 to make the repairs to your house.
It was a $90,000 repair.
It was a $90,000 repair, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the insurance company sent you a check. You signed it over to the contractor who did the work, and now you're back in your house and you're good. You expect yourself to get a slight insurance increase the next time your insurance renews. Why? Because they paid out a large claim. They need to make some of their money back, and they ought to make some of their money back. And so that happens. It's like had a large claim, got a little bit of an insurance increase. That's just how it works. No harm, no foul. Everything makes sense. But here's where the weirdness starts. Let's say in my analogy, maybe you start getting copied on a whole bunch of emails between the insurance company and the contractor, and you then read through the whole thread of them, and you start realizing, holy cow, I don't think I was meant to be copied on these emails. And so then you see in the thread of emails, you see that the contractor gave $10,000 back to the insurance company in the form of let's just call it a rebate or a refund. And then you realize, hold on a second, my rate increase was based on a $90,000 claim, but now it's an $80,000 claim because he just gave $10,000 back. Mm-hmm. Then you read through the threads, and then you realize that all the materials, the tarps, the generators, the lamps, the ceiling fans, the drywall, the paint, the trim, the studs, the shingles, every single thing that contractor purchased was purchased from or through another company that the insurance company either owns or invests in. And because in this imperfect analogy, all the details are there, you do that math, and then you realize, holy cow, this wasn't an $80,000 claim or a $90,000 claim. He's paid so much money buying things from the insurance company that now it was really a $60,000 claim. So the difference between $60,000 and $90,000 is 50% from that angle, right? Mm-hmm. Again, what is your insurance rate based on? The $90,000 claim. So all the rates were inflated, but then once the damage was done, that inflated rate was what was used to say, hey, your insurance is high. And so here's the question. Did the insurance company blow the tree down and make the wind blow? No, but they darn sure positioned themselves to profit when it did.
Yes.
And similar things are happening and have been happening for the last 15 years or so in the world of medical care and medical insurance and medical billing.
And that's a really important point and word, Matt. Medical care system, the U.S. for-profit medical care system, because it's not a healthcare system. because the system profits when we're sick, when there are interventions to be made. There is no profit to be made to keep you well, to keep you healthy, and to keep you out of the system.
Well, I would caution, I'd be careful in using or in throwing shade at the fact that it's for profit. Because all of the nonprofit, quote unquote, is equally fraught with
I don't talk about
inflation.
Nonprofits. I call them tax exempt.
Yeah.
So let's call it
non-transparent. Let's call it non-transparent.
Non-transparent, fully padded as they want system.
Right.
That's what it is. Because folks that listen to this show for a while know that I've stopped calling quote unquote nonprofit facilities and systems
tax exempt.
Nonprofit. They're just tax exempt because they do as much, if not more, egregious things to pad revenues. So it's the for-profit system.
I don't work for free.
It's a profit or non-tax exempt facility.
Right. So I personally don't work for free. I'm going to assume you don't. Everyone deserves to make money, and everyone deserves to make a little bit more money than they spend, as long as they bring value to the service that they. But what gets my goat is when these folks gouge. And the post that I made on LinkedIn that you saw that drew us together was about specific medications, and it doesn't always have to be the $23,000 one dose drug. Sometimes it's the atorvastatin, which is one of the 10 most prescribed medications in the nation, and it's just a monthly maintenance medication for millions of Americans. And it might cost you, it might cost an average person $8 as a copay out of pocket for the person, but it might be hitting the insurance plan on the backside that it was associated with anywhere from $12 to $40 to $50. There's just no rhyme or reason to it. Meanwhile, that same medication of atorvastatin, and I'm just picking on it because it starts with A and it's in the top 10, might literally cost $3. So if it costs $3, why shouldn't it just cost $3? Then have a small and reasonable and transparently, readily available fee.
Keyword transparent.
Exactly.
Because you can hide the padding, the extreme padding, and the kickbacks, quote unquote rebates. So, let's not call them.
Yeah, don't get me going on rebates.
Yeah. If you're transparent, those things are seen. You can't hide kickbacks, rebates, and inappropriate gouging in a transparent system.
That's right.
With transparent,
they go away in a truly transparent system.
Exactly. So, Matt, what would you say happened next? How did you decide, you know what, I'm going to go into the insurance brokerage industry?
Oh, right. So I mentioned that I happen to know someone who was on the forefront of the health cost transparency movement, and he was a member of an organization called Health Rosetta. I read Dave Chase's wonderful technical book called The CEO's Guide to Restoring the American Dream by Dave Chase. I highly recommend it. And I said to myself and my wife, if this is real, I want to be a part of whatever this is. I want to be a part of righting these wrongs and hopefully pumping the brakes on this cliff that we are headed towards. This is a completely financially unsustainable model. And I quit my job and became an insurance advisor, got my license, and started trying to shout it from the mountaintops.
And the rest is history. What year was this? So your journey started in 2014. When did you finally say, you know what, I'm going to fight from within? You can do best fighting the system if you're within the system, right?
I became a licensed advisor in 2019. So I'm relatively new to the space, and it's a lot of fun to be on what I feel is the right side of history. Here we are living in a world right now where the average American family doesn't even have $1,000 saved up. That's
For an
unfortunately
emergency.
very true.
It can't come up with, there's many statistics over the years. Some say 500, some say 400.
Whatever that number is. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you've got a $5,000 insurance deductible and you don't even have $1,000, then you are functionally uninsured.
Exactly.
Yet you're paying for it every single paycheck.
There you go.
And that doesn't have to be the case. Yeah, that does not have to be the case. So, my fellows that speak like I do and use these crazy words like transparency and accountability and fiduciary, we're not trying to necessarily change policy. We're typically we're hitting it from the grassroots, one employer at a time, because whether you like it or not, the American system is employer-based health insurance. And so we're not trying to boil the ocean, as they say. We're just going after these employers that offer health plans to their employees, and we're just a different kind of a broker. There's no difference from me on paper than the fella that told me to stop asking questions. Except for that I bring a different level of transparency. We pull back the curtain, so to speak, and show them the ugliness of the sausage factory.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's really helpful, Matt. What would you say if you had to say one thing? What is the one thing that you want folks to know about health insurance, or the U.S. healthcare system, whether you have insurance or not?
Ask questions. If someone, whether they have a white coat on or not, says you should, I recommend this procedure or that procedure. First of all, I would say, well, what happens if we don't? And if they say, oh, then you can wait, well, then take that into consideration. I'm not a doctor. I'm not about to give medical advice, but ask questions. And you said it earlier, follow the money. And the paper trail of when one does have a health episode it is very daunting. And I listened to one of your episodes a few episodes back, and you were talking about the gotchas of medical billing. And holy moly, I'm in the business, and they make no sense. So seek counsel wherever you can. Seek counsel from your HR department at work. Seek counsel from a friend of yours that's in the industry. If you have access to someone that does what I do, ask them. And you might be getting a bill for $12,000. And if you just pay it, guess what? You're $12,000 lighter. But it may not necessarily be legit at all. In fact, I've had a situation personally that you mentioned, Dr. Virgie, that we were receiving bills after a procedure was done for a family member that were completely erroneous. They made no sense whatsoever. My wife called the number on the bill, and this wasn't a statement. It was a bill. It said the words invoice. It had CPT codes. It had everything. But we knew something was wrong, and we called the number and said simply, "Yeah, what is this about?" The answer that we got was immediate and decisive. They literally said, "Oh yeah, that was a mistake. Don't worry about it. Wait a second. You sent me a bill for over $1,000, and if I had written you a check or called you with a credit card number, you would have taken my $1,000. But now that I'm questioning it, you're going to tell me it's a mistake. Exactly. How is that not fraud? How is that not a prosecutable criminal act? I don't know. Maybe it is, but that's the world we live in right now.
I talk about the system the problem with this system is that, yes, there are participants in the system that know that what is done with padding and gouging, and we talk about balance billing in other shows. That's where a network provider who's agreed to take whatever your insurance pays as payment in full, where they're like, oh snap, well, here's a bill for what we did for you because your insurance only paid this amount. Well, that's balance billing. That's breach of contract. So the thing is that many, many, many times providers, and it's usually the large systems that do it. And 65%, by the way, you mentioned this, you touched on this earlier, Matt, 65% of hospital and medical care systems in the United States are quote unquote nonprofit, meaning tax exempt. So when I say the for-profit system, I just mean the U.S. healthcare system.
Sure.
And so essentially the padding is, anyway. So the point is that it doesn't have to, it shouldn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. But the reason why it's done is because the providers know that it's immoral, it's unethical, but it's not illegal.
It's completely legal, right?
It's totally legal. So no, you're not going to, you can't go after them for fraud. They'll say, oh, our mistake, and they'll send you the money back if you catch it after you paid them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so what's the end game here? The end game is hopefully your employer has an advisor that says what I say and talks like I talk and thinks like I think. And there are about, there are several hundred of us in the nation. Now there's roughly about 250,000 benefits brokers in the nation. So if there's 500 of us, what's that math? 0.00000 something, 1%. Yeah. Or 2%. So it's very small.
Much less than 1%, a fraction of 1%.
It's small. Let's just say that it's small. But hopefully your employer who is providing the health benefits plan has someone that says, that does what we do at Oakbridge Insurance. And if they do, and if they are pulling all the levers of claims cost containment, and again, we're not saying claims containment. We're not talking about making people healthier. That's a whole different conversation.
That's a different conversation, correct.
We're just saying, here's the costs associated with the medical claim. Let's make sure that you're paying a fair price for those things. When an employer allows the vendors involved with it to do those things and brings that kind of transparency and that sort of a zealous guarding of those costs, which employers do, by the way, with all of their other cost centers, all of them. Yes. They're just not doing it with benefits, with
health benefits,
so
health insurance benefits.
Right. So the end result of that is usually about anywhere from a 20 to, I've seen as high as 50, but I'm comfortable saying 30 to 40% lower cost of healthcare. And generally speaking, those savings are passed down to the employees in the form of lower deductibles, lower out-of-pocket expenses with office visits and co-insurance, and lower premiums. And those employers that are doing it are experiencing a competitive advantage in this marketplace.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Matt, for
it's my pleasure.
Me. I really appreciate it. And we were talking earlier, I know this is a really busy time of year for you. So it's much appreciated you carving time out to talk with us and educate us about the system and what we can do. If we're fortunate enough to have insurance, our employers always ask questions. Even if we have insurance, just don't hand over the card and say, okay, that's the way it is. Always ask questions. If it doesn't make sense, ask questions.
And even if you're not someone who works for an employer who is large enough, if the employer has more than 50 full-time employees, they are required to offer medical insurance. That doesn't mean that it's going to be good, but they are required to offer it. But whether you are a part of if you are someone who is a gig economy employee, a freelancer, or you work for a very small employer that doesn't offer benefits, all these things that we talked about still apply. Ask questions, seek, shop around, walk into your doctor's office and ask if they offer self-pay or cash pay discounts. Odds are they do.
Excellent.
And there wouldn't be the GoodRx.com and Mark Cuban's thing. I forget what it's called, drugforless.com or something like that.
Excellent stuff. Yeah.
There wouldn't be those sites are great. And if you can get a better price on your needed medication by using one of those, then by all means do so. But I contend that your insurance plan ought to get a better deal than those.
In the first place.
It should get the best deal. You're already paying for it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Matt. Much appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take good care.
You too.